I'm pretty worried about a different scenario, which is it's very, well, it's becoming clearer and clearer that we do not understand the implications of what we're doing with these technologies. I mean, McLuhan always said this. It was, he said no technology in human history has ever been put in place with even a partial appreciation of its consequences. The unappreciated consequences of what we're doing is that we're actually building some kind of a superorganism. And we do not know where we fit into things if this Promethean force that we're playing with should actually come to life. Worse, because it's a globally distributed intelligence. I mean, we can have paranoid fantasies about it, but I think after a few minutes of thinking about it, you realize you really don't know what to think about it. The fantasy that it would herd us all into dumpsters seems unlikely. It's actually like an impossible intellectual problem, because the question you're asking yourself is, what would a superintelligence be like? And the reason that's hard to answer is because you ain't one. And so you're like looking up into the light and saying, is it God or demon? Is it salvation or extinction? And the answer is, if you knew that, you would be it. And yet, what it took us to achieve in 100,000 years of evolution, this thing could probably achieve in a long morning on the net. And so it will be like a cascade, a chain reaction from the child's first cry to the complete coordination of world electrical grids and air traffic control systems and everything else could be a matter of hours. Hans Moravec, the guy who runs the Carnegie Mellon Institute for Machine Intelligence, says we may not know what hit us, that we're essentially incubating an alien intelligence on the internet, and the things we want from the net bring this thing ever closer. Like one of the things we're building into the net is the ability to pull as much processor power to any given problem as that problem requires. Well, then for an AI, for an artificial intelligence, that would mean it could just immediately, basically, appropriate as much processor power as it needed to do what it was doing. For the past 10 years, while we've been cheerfully waging the 90s in our various ways, an enormous change has taken place in the machine environment, which we're not even aware of or have the dimmest understanding of, which is all the machines, all the high IQ machines in the world have become telepathic. They now all talk to each other. They're now all interconnected. In 1988, this wasn't true. Now in 1998, it is true. And nobody pretends to understand what is going on.
What do you mean by telepathic? The machines are telepathic?
They communicate with each other over the internet.
Oh.
What used to be a paperweight sitting on your desk is now a node in a global machine intelligence that never sleeps, that is constantly taking in and processing data, self-regulating itself, controlling power grids, inventory control, programs deciding how much petroleum should be extracted in Abu Dhabi, at what speed the tankers should move in order to keep the price of the French franc within a certain range, in order to keep the fabrication of steel and aluminum within certain parameters, in order to keep the yen steady, and this vast system of homeostatic controls that regulates industry, finance, research funding, even how many students are entering universities in certain engineering specialties. And this is all done by computer projection. And we love it because what we see is greater efficiency, money going further, projects being completed sooner. We serve the same strange gods that the evolving intelligence of the net serves. And there may not be an aha moment where, the New York Times prints a headline, "Artificial intelligence takes over planet, human race now obsolete." You may be left to figure this out for yourself, or the slow dawning in various sectors. It's the old, who will tell the people problem. But I didn't believe this for a long time. I mean, there was for a long time in AI a school of thought that very loudly proclaimed that this was a foolish idea, could never happen, people didn't understand this and this and this, and it was just a golem, a myth of modernity. But all those voices have fallen silent because the complexity theory, non-equilibrium thermodynamics, information theory, the news in from molecular genetics, cellular automata, autocatalytic hypercycles, study of autopoiesis in large-scale systems. All this leads to the conclusion that, weird things do happen when systems complexify beyond a certain level. And emergent behaviors seem extremely organized and intelligent and goal-seeking. And we're now way too far down this road to turn back. So, in a way, all our prescient projections of alien and extraterrestrial intelligence may actually be about this strange companion that we have summoned into the historical experience through this relationship with our machines. I think I said at one of these other meetings that I read George Dyson's book, Darwin Among the Machines, which, if you're interested in all this, is a great book to read. And the point that he makes there is that when human beings think clearly, they think the same way machines think. In other words, if you think clearly, your thinking can be formulated through a mathematical method called symbolic logic. Well, symbolic logic is exactly what is being downloaded into machines in the form of software. The so-called Boolean operators, if, then, and, or, but, we understand what these words mean perfectly. So do machines. These are the distinctions machines make. So, in spite of them being very different from us on many levels, sense is sense. Whether you're a machine or a human being. If you're a machine running bad code, it's garbage in, garbage out. If you're a human being running bad code, garbage in, garbage out. So there is this powerful commonality. Well, then what kind of a destiny can we forge with this thing, which is actually, a child of our own Promethean aspirations? It's very unexpected, I think, to almost everybody. Very few people, we all thought it was going to be about paper clothes, hovercraft, and mining colonies on the moon. The idea that it's about, distributed machine intelligence, virtual realities, and the downloading of consciousness into digital circuitry. It's a future we never imagined or supposed, which is a strong clue that it might be the real thing. This might be what you shipped for when you were thinking it was Flash Gordon. Well, these magical dreams are very old, I do think we want to walk the golden streets of the imagination. Either we want it as heaven, or we want it as a Buddhist visualization of some mandalic realm, or we want to return to the high days of Atlantis, and virtual reality can deliver. It can actually release you into literary narrative as though it were real. And, I think very quickly the real struggle in Greg Egan's fiction, he makes clear that, and I agree with him, that the real struggle that we will face in the future is the struggle to remain sensible to each other. That there is going to be a tendency for us, like the head of a dandelion, to just explode in a million directions. Everyone their own private Idaho, everyone completely able to project their own fears, hopes, dreams, phobias, obsessions with such crystalline, hard-edged perfection and persuasive realism that the real struggle will be to remain coherent, for the word human to include us all and not exclude anyone. We don't want to divide into those who till the earth, those who went in machine bodies to the stars, and those who downloaded themselves into nanoviruses and disappeared over the edge of the event horizon into the black hole at the center of the galaxy. Maybe we want these things. I like the idea of the human family, whatever its individual expressions and adumbrations, staying with a coherent image. Of course we're all different, but our commonality is in the bedrock of this planet, something not lightly to be given up, I would think.
Maybe unity is not the way to go.
Well, this I don't have an answer here. This was the issue that hovered over Diaspora, Greg Egan's novel that's set the most far in the future, because at least 3 forms of human beings had come into existence so diametrically different from each other that they operated basically in complete isolation from each other. Some people became cyborgs, human-machine unions that were essentially immortal and that could cruise the stars and have, cosmic adventures. But what most people did was they became entirely digital. They had no interface to hardware. They simply became streams of electrons living out endlessly adumbrated fantasies in the synthetic realities. And then there was the predictable third group, the earth-centered purists, who tilled the soil and had dirt under their fingernails and actually had sex to procreate rather than dial up things out of vats and stuff like that. And I'm sure, but yeah, people will choose whatever they want, and of course people will migrate between one group and another. The one thing that all this makes me feel good about is I think it's an expansion of choice, and then presuming there's some kind of overarching dynamic, whether Darwinian or something else, it will all titrate out in whatever direction it wants to go. One fantasy I've had is that what man could do for the earth is make everything conscious. That Grateful Dead song, "You Are the Eyes of the World." let every eye lead to a conscious mind. Let the squirrel think, and the squid think, and the bumblebee think. Because for sure, we will artificially create robot simulacrums for ourselves to pass among into the natural world as inhabitants of animal bodies. But why not just bring all animal mind to the threshold of sentience? Could that be done? Well, we don't know, because we don't know upon what foundation sentience rests, whether it requires a certain number of cc's of brain mass, or whether that's a completely preposterous and absurd notion, and that conceivably a paramecium or a housefly or a hummingbird could have a kind of shared intelligence. I mean, everything has its own intelligence anyway, that's the expression of its nature. But imagine a planet-wide community of seamless intelligence where, you could log on to the mind of a coral reef as easily as you could log on to the internet. I think it's going to come down to matters of engineering and design, choice, and what values will be served, and it's a political thing. It's amazing, come back to this thing that this French sociologist Jacques Ellul said. It seems like a very deep statement that we return to it year after year. He said there are no political solutions, only technological ones. The rest is propaganda. And then he explained in a very large book what he meant by these words, political, technological, and propaganda. So the technologies to do almost anything are coming into our grip. What is not clear and less easy to summon is a political agenda, a plan, because we've never planned. We've only been a global society for 40 or 50 years, and the consequences of all this are just beginning to become apparent.